Imhotep. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. We have some breaking news here. Um, it is Monday, January 30th, 2023. It is Monday, January 20th, 2023. Hotep. Hey, this is Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. Some of you all saw me on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture, today at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we talked about the fallout from the Tyre Nichols video being released on Friday, January 27th. And we dealt with healing from this trauma. And we also talked about briefly, we talked about a 6th police officer being suspended. Okay. We also have some breaking news story from NBC News dealing with 3 Memphis paramedics fired for their response to the fatal beating of Tyre Nichols. So I'm going to go to this breaking news story first. Then we're going to come back to the then I want to come back to the story from then we'll come back to the story from dealing with the 6th officer. The 6th officer who was suspended. He is the white officer who was heard on a body camera saying, "I hope they stomp his ass. I hope they stomp his ass." Let's look at this story here from NBC News. Everybody share this broadcast on your social media platforms. Invite your friends to tune in also. 3 Memphis paramedics fired for their response to the fatal beating of Tyre Nichols. Three fire personnel who responded to the scene failed to conduct an adequate patient assessment, the Memphis Fire Department said on Monday. Okay, now 2 of them are African American, 1 is white. So this is the story just came out today, this evening. 3 paramedics who responded to the fatal beating of Tyre Nichols were terminated on Monday, January 30th. Monday, January 30th, after an internal investigation, the Memphis Fire Department said. Robert Long, Jamichael Sandrich, and Michelle Whitaker were found to have violated multiple department policies, in their patient response to Tyre Nichols on January 7th, the department said in a statement. Okay, now Michael and Lieutenant Michelle Whitaker are African American. The other person is white. Now, the Memphis Fire Department. The Memphis Fire Department said their actions or inactions on the scene that night do not meet the expectations of the Memphis Fire Department and are not reflective in the outstanding service the men and women of the Memphis Fire Department provide daily in our community. Now, the department was dispatched to the scene. The Memphis Fire Department was dispatched to the scene of Tyre Nichols' traffic stop at 8:31 p.m. After police called due to a person pepper sprayed at the scene. The department noted. Now, Long, Sandrich, and Whitaker were dispatched to a second location and arrived to find Tyre Nichols leaning against a police vehicle. Leaning against a police vehicle 10 minutes after the call. Now, one of the questions that arose, and I was watching coverage today, and we talked about this topic generally on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture, today on the Black Star Media Network, Roland Martin's media network. And it was about 22 to 24 minutes before Tyre Nichols received medical attention once the EMTs arrived on the scene. Okay, so this is another one of the questions that is coming up. None of the officers provided any first aid, any medical attention. And according to Police Chief Cerillian Davis, she did an extensive interview on Friday, January 27th, on NBC News Now, I think it was NBC News Now. They showed it on MSNBC also, so it was on MSNBC's website, msnbc.com. She said that all of her police officers are trained in first aid. None of them on the scene rendered any first aid to Tyre Nichols. Okay, none of the police officers rendered first aid to Tyre Nichols. Now, here are the pictures of the 3 EMTs who were fired. From left, Robert Long is the white EMT, Jamichael Sandridge, the African-American male, and Michelle Whitaker, Lieutenant Michelle Whitaker, okay, African-American female. Now, Long and Sandridge responded to Tyre Nichols, while Whitaker and a driver remained in the vehicle. The Memphis Fire Department said, quote, "Our investigation has concluded that the 2 EMTs responded based on the initial nature of the call, that being a person pepper sprayed, and information they were told on the scene, and failed to conduct an adequate patient assessment of Mr. Nichols." Okay, our investigation has concluded that the 2 EMTs responded based on the initial nature of the call, a person being pepper sprayed, and information they were told on the scene, and failed to conduct an adequate patient assessment of Mr. Nichols. Now, voicemails left at phone numbers listed for Long and Whitaker were not immediately returned Monday evening. Sandridge did not immediately respond to an email requesting comment. The video released from the Nichols traffic stop showed officers exerting multiple uses of force against him, including pepper spray. The officers also appeared to punch, strike a baton, and seemingly kick Nichols in the face while he was detained. The videos were released on Friday, January 27th. Now, we know that Tyre Nichols was transported to the hospital in critical condition, where he died 3 days later. A cause of death has not yet been released. Now, police initially said Tyre Nichols was pulled over in a reckless driving stop. They said it was a traffic violation. This is what they said initially. Now, New York Times, there's an article. Well, first of all, on Friday, January 27th, when I was preparing to be on Roland Martin's show, because I'm on Roland's show every Friday, I watched the full interview that Police Chief Cerillian Davis did with NBC. And she said that she and the investigators have reviewed all the video footage. They reviewed cameras that were in that area. They reviewed all the video footage, and they cannot substantiate why Tyre Nichols was pulled over in the first place. They can't find any evidence of him driving the wrong way. The officers initially said he was driving the wrong way on the street. That's why they pulled him over. They said it was a traffic stop. She said they can't find any evidence of a traffic violation to pull him over. So police initially said Nichols was pulled over in a reckless driving stop, but Memphis Police Chief Cerillian C.J. Davis said her office has found no proof to substantiate the claim. And she said this in the interview with NBC News. Officers ordered Nichols on the ground, giving him conflicting commands before he ran away. Officers pursued Nichols, deploying a stun gun on him as he fled from the officers, according to the videos. He was repeatedly pepper sprayed before being beaten an estimated 80 yards from his mother's home. Nichols died 3 days later. Now, preliminary findings in an autopsy conducted by a forensic pathologist for Nichols' family show he was severely beaten before he died. the family's attorneys have said the Shelby County Medical Examiner's Office has not yet released an official cause of death. Now, 5 officers, Tadarius Bean, Demetrius Haley, Emmett Martin III, Desmond Mills Jr., and Justin Smith were fired on January 20th after an administrative investigation found they had violated department policy on use of force. They had violated department policy on use of force. A 6th officer, Officer Preston Hemphill, was relieved of duty, police said on Monday. Now, Bean, Haley, Martin, Mills, and Smith, all 5 African-American police officers, were charged with 2nd-degree murder, 2 counts of unofficial misconduct, 2 counts of aggravated kidnapping, 1 count of official oppression, 1 count of official oppression, and 1 count of aggravated assault, prosecutors announced last week. Okay, so we know that this is a developing story. I have a number of articles that printed up on this, and I've been following this about History Network show as well. Now, if we look at there's a couple things I want to look at. We're going to go to the white police officer, Preston Hemphill, who was suspended today. We're going to go to that. Well, we found out he was suspended, I should say. We found out today that he was suspended. But I want to go to this analysis from the New York Times. This is 71 commands in 13 minutes. 71 commands in 13 minutes. Now, if you saw me on Roland Martin Unfiltered on Friday, we were on live when the video was released. So Roland showed the video live on the air. Okay. One of the things I talked about was that he was given a number of commands that were confusing. They tell him get on the ground. He's already on the ground. Okay. They tell him to turn over or something like that. You want me to turn over on my stomach or my back? They say, show your hands. Well, one of the officers is holding his hand and threatening to break his arm. You're surrounded by people giving you conflicting commands and all giving you commands at the same time. Okay. That's confusing to people. What do you want me to do? Get on the ground. I'm already on the ground. You know, and then you see that the officers they were part of the Scorpion unit. Okay. They were in unmarked police cars. And some of them plain clothes. So it's like you're trying to figure out what's going on. You're getting snatched out of your car. Okay. You're trying to figure out what's going on. At no point, I can't see at any point was he told what he did that was wrong. At any point, now maybe we'll find out later through a deeper analysis of the video, but as we know now, at no point it appears was Tyre Nichols told what he did was wrong, what he did that was wrong, what was the infraction, anything like that. So this is once again, this is just I mean, if there was a case, if there was a textbook case of how not to be a police officer, this would be it right here. What not to do. Okay. So I want to go back to this here. So 71 commands in 13 minutes. Okay. That would confuse anybody. Now, if we look at this here, a New York Times analysis found that officers gave dozens of contradictory and unachievable orders to Tyre Nichols. The punishment was severe and eventually fatal. So police officers unleashed a barrage of commands that were confusing, conflicting, and sometimes even impossible to obey. A New York Times analysis of footage from Tyre Nichols' fatal traffic stop found when Mr. Nichols could not comply And even when he managed to comply, the officers responded with escalating force. The review of the available footage found that officers shouted at least 71 commands, during the approximately 13-minute period before they reported over the radio that Nichols was officially in custody. The orders were issued at 2 locations, one near Mr. Nichols' vehicle and the other in the area he fled to and where he would be severely beaten. The orders were often simultaneous and contradictory. Officers commanded Mr. Nichols to show his hands, even though they were holding his hands. They told him to get on the ground, even when he was on the ground. And they ordered him to reposition himself, even when they had control of his body. Experts say the actions of the Memphis police officers were an egregious example of a long-standing problem in policing, in which officers physically punish civilians for perceived disrespect or disobedience. Some officers physically punish civilians for perceived disrespect or disobedience, sometimes called contempt of cop. The practice was notoriously prevalent decades ago. Now, Jeffrey Alpert, a professor of criminology and criminal justice at the University of South Carolina, said it was far more rampant in the 80s when I started doing police work than it was in the 90s or 2000s. Even before body cams, cops were getting more professional and wouldn't make it personal, like it seemed to be in this case. This is so far out of the norm, end quote. Now, to mitigate the potential for escalation and confusion during police encounters, today's police training typically calls for a single officer at the scene to issue clear and specific commands. It also requires police officers to respond professionally and proportionately to any perceived act of defiance. But the New York Times review, let me increase the size of this here. But the New York Times review shows that officers did the exact opposite over and over. The available footage does not show any sign that the officers present intervened. Doesn't show any sign that the officers present intervened to stop the aggressive use of force. If anything, it shows the contrary. At one point, footage captured an officer saying, quote, "I hope they stop his ass," after Mr. Nichols' attempt to flee the scene. Now, that's Preston Hemphill, who we found out today has been suspended. That's the white officer. He hasn't been charged yet, but he's been suspended. When asked for comment on the officer's conduct at the traffic stop, a spokesperson for the Memphis Police Department said, quote, "All information that is available at this point has been released. However, know that this investigation remains ongoing." Now, the Memphis Police Association also said it could not comment. Now, that's the union. That's the local union there in Memphis, Tennessee. The Memphis Police Association also said it could not comment because of the ongoing investigation. The New York Times analysis is based on footage from police body cameras and street cameras released by the city of Memphis and synchronized by the New York Times. So they go through and lay out four key moments in which officers punished Tyre Nichols for not complying with flawed commands. These video contains scenes of graphic violence. So confusing orders. You can read the rest of this. So they break down confusing orders, And the also, let's look at the next one. Contradictory commands. After fleeing on foot, Nichols is seen lying on the ground a few hundred yards away from his car, flanked by officers demanding that he give them his hands. But one of them is gripping his left arm and the other is holding his right arm. It's not clear how the officers expect Nichols to move. The third officer runs up with a can of pepper spray. You're about to get sprayed in the face. Good, he says. The others start punching Mr. Nichols in the face. Okay, these are just thugs. That's what these are just thugs. Orders not resisted. Orders not resisted. Two officers stand over Tyre Nichols, who is lying on his side and rubbing his eyes after being pepper sprayed 3 times. An officer kicks Mr. Nichols in the face. Tyre Nichols appears to be barely conscious or coherent, but officers treat him as if he is resisting orders. Okay, you tell him lay flat. You know, just ridiculous. Impossible orders as well, as was stated. One officer uses Tyre Nichols' handcuffed arm to pull his body from the ground and into a kneeling position. Then the other officer strikes him with a baton 3 times, yelling, "Give us your hands." Okay, but apparently his hands are handcuffed behind his back. Surrounded by 4 officers, he tries to move away from the baton. Okay, another officer says, "Give me your effing hands." But Tyre, with one officer pinning his arms behind his back, another gripping his handcuffed wrist, and the third punching his face, cannot comply. So read the rest of this here. These are domestic terrorists. 71 commands in 13 minutes. Officers gave Tyre Nichols impossible orders. Okay, now I want to look at that's from the New York Times. Good reporting, good analysis from the New York Times. And I have a subscription to the New York Times, so I read the New York Times every day. That was from January 29th, if I remember correctly. Okay, so the news came out today about they released the name of the 6th officer, and this officer has been suspended. Okay, and let me try to find something here. Yeah, this officer has been suspended. Preston Hemphill. This is the white officer. This is the one who said, "I hope they stomp his ass." Okay, Preston better hope he doesn't go to prison. Preston better hope he does not go to prison, because it ain't gonna go too well for him in prison. I'll tell you that right now. Once his name gets out, it's not gonna go too well for him. Let's look at this here. We flip over to this other article. Okay, now this is from the Washington Post. Okay, let me just refresh the screen, make sure they didn't update, because there was an update a few minutes ago. Okay, let's pull up this article. 6 officer suspended. 6 officers suspended in Tyre Nichols' death investigation. This is from the Washington Post. It was updated January 30th. It's from January 30th, 2023. How's everybody doing today? Give us a thumbs up, give us a heart, give us a like on this broadcast. Follow us on our fan page, The African History Network, The African History Network. I'm Michael Imhotep, founder of the African History Network, host of the African History Network show. And follow us on our YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. All right, a 6th Memphis police officer has been relieved of duty during the investigation of Tyre Nichols' death after beating by police. Now, Tyre Nichols' family is saying, why are we just now learning the name of this officer? Okay, we just found the name today. Now, the officer has not been charged with anything yet. And Preston Hemphill was not at the second location for the second encounter where Tyre was actually arrested, handcuffed, and beaten. He was at the first location. Now, a sixth Memphis police officer has been relieved of duty during the investigation of Tyre Nichols' death after a beating by police. Officer Preston Hemphill has been relieved of duty pending the outcome of the administrative investigation, the police department told the Washington Post late Monday morning. Officer Hemphill was hired in 2018. Now, Hemphill is a white man. He was relieved of duty at the same time as the other 5 officers charged in the incident, said Kim Elder, a spokesperson for the Memphis Police Department. The Shelby County, Tennessee District Attorney's Office is considering charges for Preston Hemphill, according to a statement posted to its Facebook account. Now, Preston Hemphill's attorney is Lee Gerald. Attorney Lee Gerald confirmed in a statement that his client was the 3rd officer at the initial stop. And the first video was from Officer Preston Hemphill's body camera. Quote, as Attorney Lee Gerald said, quote, as per departmental regulations, Officer Hemphill activated his body cam. He was never present at the second scene. He is cooperating with officials in this investigation, end quote. Now, Officer Preston Hemphill's body camera captures part of the initial confrontation with Tyre Nichols. In the video, Officer Preston Hemphill can be seen using a taser on Tyre Nichols. Later, a voice on the body cam that seems to be Officer Preston Hemphill's body cam says, quote, I hope they stomp his ass. I hope they stomp his ass after Tyre Nichols escaped. Okay, so we'll see what happens here. He was at the first incident, not the second incident. Prominent civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who is representing Tyre Nichols' family, questioned why it took so long for Hemphill's identity to be made public. Quote, why was the white officer involved in the brutal attack of #Tyre Nichols shielded and protected, he tweeted, adding that he's called for transparency, but the police department has not risen to the occasion. Now, the Memphis Police Department said they did not release Preston Hemphill's name because he has not been charged yet. He has not been charged with anything yet. He's been suspended. The investigation continues. They released the names of the 5 African-American officers after they were charged. Okay, they were charged last week. Now, they said the Memphis Police Department said that Preston Hemphill's name could be heard in the video, one of the videos on like one of the body camera videos. Here's the tweet from Attorney Benjamin Crump. Okay, so you can check this out. Why did it take so long? Okay, now Attorney Benjamin Crump has called on Congress to approve the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Now, we talked about this today on Faraji Muhammad's show, The Culture. Okay, so you'll see that video as well, which passed in the Democratic-controlled House in 2021, but failed in the Senate. As I said on the show today, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act passed, it was March 3rd, 2021. It passed by a vote of 220 to 212. And all of the Republicans in the House of Representatives voted against the bill. Okay, 212 Republicans voted no for the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act after they sat up there and cried and talked about how wrong it was what happened to George Floyd. Now, those coup plotters and QAnon conspiracy theorists, now they're in charge of the House of Representatives. And the point I was making on Faraji's show today is that as long as we make policing in America, as long as we make this a black issue, you're not going to get the legislation passed that needs to be passed. Okay, especially with Republicans in control of the House. Then in the Senate, even though Democrats control the Senate, based upon Senate rules, it takes 60 votes to get a bill passed in the Senate, unless it is dealing with judges. Okay, then it's a simple majority, 51. Okay, so you need 60 votes. Okay, so if you have 51 Democrats, in the Senate. That means you need 9 Republicans. Okay, well, the Black Tea Party Republican, Senator Tim Scott, he's the one who blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in the first place. Senator Tim Scott blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act in the Senate when you had the negotiations in 2020, when the negotiations were going on, and Republicans were in control of the Senate. This is before Biden came in office. In 2021, I should say. I'm sorry, 2021, we had the negotiations, and Democrats had a slim majority in the Senate. It was 50-50 tie-breaking vote, Vice President Kamala Harris. There was an equal number of Democrats and Republicans on the committees, however. But the negotiations between Senator Tim Scott, Senator Cory Booker, Representative Karen Bass, Tim Scott comes out and lies in September of 2021 and says that the sticking point was defund the police. The Fraternal Order Police and the International Association of Police Chiefs, they put out a joint memo right around September 25th, 2021, and said defund the police was not part of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. And they both those police unions supported the bill. Okay, so what I was saying on the show today is that as long as you make this a Black issue, you're not going to get these bills passed, especially in the Senate. And there's only 2.5 Black people in the Senate. There's only 2.5 African Americans in the U.S. Senate. And I say half because half the time Senator Tim Scott doesn't act like he's Black, because he consistently votes against policies that are beneficial to African Americans. He voted against Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson being on the U.S. Supreme Court. He voted against Kristen Clark being assistant attorney general in the Civil Rights Division. He voted against the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. He voted against the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan. Okay. He blocked the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. All these things. This is Tim Scott in the Senate. Okay, now if we go back and look at this here, and there's a couple things I want to show you. The legislation aimed, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, aimed at combating police misconduct. It would limit qualified immunity policies that protect police officers accused of misconduct. It would create a national registry of sustained disciplinary actions against officers, and it would ban chokeholds and limit no-knock warrants, among other measures. Okay, aimed at combating police misconduct. Now, the most important thing that it would do is not listed here specifically. It's not listed here specifically because it would lower the standard that you could prosecute police officers at the federal level, and it would lower it from willful intent down to negligence or recklessness, however they phrased it. Willful intent is extremely hard to prove. Willful intent is extremely hard to prove. Now, if it goes to state of mind, and it's a civil rights violation, you have to prove that someone willfully intended to deprive someone of their civil rights. You have to prove that someone willfully intended to deprive someone of their civil rights. Not that they actually did deprive someone of their civil rights. You have to prove that they willfully intended to do it. Well, that goes to state of mind. That's hard to prove. If you lower the standard down to negligence or recklessness, now that's a lower bar, and that's easier to prove. So you can prosecute more officers and ultimately get more officers convicted. Well, qualified immunity. A lot of people talk about that, but I'm not sure if people really realize that qualified immunity is not a criminal charge. It's in civil court. It's just suing somebody for monetary damages. Nobody's gonna go to prison over that. Not only that, the police union is going to help them raise money for their attorney and help them raise money for the settlements, to pay the settlements. Okay, so qualified immunity should be removed, but that's not the most important thing in the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. Lowering the federal standard and being able to prosecute more police officers, send more police officers to federal prison, which means they will be felons now. They have a felony record. Okay, they can't own firearms. They can't work in law enforcement anymore. That's a bigger deterrent than being able to sue somebody in civil court. Okay, so that's Ben Crump. The Memphis Police Association, the union representing officers, did not respond to requests for comment on Monday. Now, they've been very quiet. Now, the 5 African-American police officers do not belong to the Fraternal Order Police, just so people understand. There was an article there's an article, we talked about this briefly on the show last night, on the African History Network show last night, and I'll see if we can pull up this article here. But they don't belong to the Fraternal Order Police. So it's some other police union that they belong to. But the police unions in general have been pretty quiet on this. Okay, this article right here. Because I have this up in Firefox. Let's see. Let's go to this one here. Let me pull this one up. Okay, this is from WPLN.org, WPLN.org. This is in Nashville, Tennessee. Ex-officers charged in the death of Tyre Nichols were not part of the National Police Union that typically defends these cases. This is from January 27, 2023. So these African-American police officers, they give their names. 5 former Memphis police officers have been fired and charged in the death of Tyre Nichols. Now questions circulating about how the officers are being treated and if their treatment has to do with their race. In many cases where an officer is charged with killing a civilian, the Fraternal Order Police steps in to provide their criminal defense. That won't be the case for the Black former officers who were charged in the beating death of Tyre Nichols. That's because those officers are not members of the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP. A spokesperson told WLPLN News that the former officers are not eligible for legal defense because the FOP does not represent them as a union. Quote, the event as described to us does not constitute legitimate police work or a traffic stop gone wrong. FOP President Patrick Yoes, Y-O-E-S, said in a statement, this is a criminal assault under the pretext of law. This is a criminal assault under the pretext of law. The FOP fraternal police, politicians, and activists across the country, across the state and country, have condemned the officer's actions. Body camera footage of the incident is scheduled to be released first, so we know body camera footage was released. So read this article here from WPLN News in Nashville, Tennessee. Ex-officers charged in the death of Tyre Nichols were not part of the National Police Union that typically defends these cases. Okay, so we have that. Now, I want to go to this other story here. We'll talk about Preston Hemphill, the 6th police officer. Also, if you like this type of information, many of you all subscribe to the African History Network. If you like this type of information, you can support the African History Network, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App, $ TheAHNShow through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/TheAHNShow. This helps us keep doing the research, stay on the air, keep broadcasting, pay some of the bills. And at our website, as I talked about on Faraji Muhammad Show today, visit our website because it has information about the online classes I teach on the weekend, online history classes, and a free Black History Month lecture that we have coming up online February 4th, 2023, Saturday, February 4th, 2023. 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's at our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Okay, let's continue here. All right, so this article from Washington Post, 6 officers suspended in Tyre Nichols' death investigation. 6th officer suspended in Tyre Nichols' death investigation. Okay, and this is from Monday, January 30th, 2023. Let's go back to this article here. So the Memphis Police Association, the union representing the officers, did not respond to requests for comment on Monday. Now, you find, so that's very strange. Usually the police union has no problem making a comment, okay? When they don't want to make a comment on this, okay, it's because they know that is nothing that they can say that is going to sometimes they're just better off just saying nothing. Okay, is what are they gonna say? Let all the facts come out, or I mean, what are they gonna say? The 4 videos, which were edited by the police before being released, tell a different story from the Memphis Police Department's initial claims. Now, there's a good article from the New York Times that just came out that talks about this, okay? And this is something that I've been researching the past few days, but there's an article from the New York Times. We're going to go to that one in just a minute. The footage shows police pepper spraying, punching, and kicking Tyre Nichols, as well as dragging and tasering him. Now, the Memphis Police Department's initial statement had described a confrontation between Tyre Nichols and the police, followed by Nichols running away. Then the statement said another confrontation occurred. The statement read, quote, afterward, the suspect complained of having a shortness of breath, and he was transported to St. Francis Hospital. Now, there is no video footage. There is no video footage of the traffic stop because the officer who stopped Tyre Nichols was driving an unmarked car that was not equipped with dashboard cameras, said Police Chief Saralyn Davis. Now, while 5 officers were fired and charged in Tyre Nichols' death this month, the month of January, Memphis police have also suggested that more fallout was possible for others within the department. The police investigation has not been able. Now, this is something we talked about. If you saw Roland Martin Unfiltered show on Friday, January 27th, that show, when I looked at it when I looked at the views on YouTube on Sunday, okay, Sunday, January 29th, that show had been viewed over 300,000 times. All right. The initial show we did and Roland showed the video live, that show had been viewed as of Sunday, January 29th, had been viewed over 300,000 times. So if you saw me on that show, one of the things I said was that Police Chief Davis told NBC News that they reviewed all the available video footage from cameras and from all the cameras in that area, the cameras on the lamppost, whatever. They reviewed that footage and they cannot find any traffic infraction that Tyre Nichols committed to justify being pulled over in the first place. The police investigation has not been able to confirm Tyre's alleged traffic violation. The officers claim he was driving on the wrong side of the road, Police Chief Davis said. Now, Police Chief Davis said last week in a video statement that the 5 officers were the ones, quote, directly, the 5 officers who were fired, the 5 African-American officers who were fired. Police Chief Davis said last week in a video statement that these were the officers directly responsible for the physical abuse. We know they belonged to the Scorpion Unit, which stands for Street Crimes Operation to Restore Peace in Our Neighborhoods. It was created in late 2021 by Police Chief Sarah Lynn Davis with the goal of saturating high crime neighborhoods with police. And we know it was shut down. They disbanded that unit on Saturday, January 28th, just a day after the police chief had defended the unit. Now, a spokesperson for the police told the Washington Post that because Officer Preston Hemphill, who is the white officer, because he is still under administrative investigation, they cannot reveal whether he was part of the Scorpion Unit. But she added other officers within the Memphis Police Department were being investigated for quote unquote department policy violations. Department policy violations. Police Chief Davis did not elaborate on the policies involved, nor did she specify the number of officers. Okay, so read the rest of this. Okay, and the Memphis Police Department internal policies note that being removed from duty does not automatically suggest wrongdoing, and that it, quote, should not be associated with a negative connotation, end quote. Okay, so read the rest of this article here. Sixth officer suspended in Tyre Nichols' death investigation. 6th officer suspended in Tyre Nichols' death investigation. I also posted an article today from localmemphis.com dealing with Shelby County DA, Memphis mayor speak out after 6th Memphis police officer involved in Tyre Nichols' death relieved of duty. Okay, now there was let me see something here. There was a piece that was an article from New York Times. And this is, from Monday, January 3rd, 2023. This one right here. Let me pull this up just a second here. Okay, so this article deals with the initial traffic stop and Video contradicts. Let's see here. Initial police report on Tyre Nichols' arrest is contradicted by videos. Okay, this is from the New York Times, January 30th, 2023. Initial police report on Tyre Nichols' arrest is contradicted by videos. A police report written hours after officers beat Tyre Nichols was starkly at odds with what videos have since revealed, making no mention of the powerful kicks and punches unleashed on Mr. Nichols, and instead claiming that Mr. Nichols was the one who was violent. The police report painted Tyre Nichols, 29 years old, who died 3 days after the January 7th, 2023 beating. The police report painted him as an irate suspect who had, quote unquote, started to fight with Memphis police officers, even reaching for one of their guns. Now, there's body camera video. You see one of the black officers say that at the end, you see him say that Tyre tried to grab one of the other black officer's guns. Okay, and there's no evidence of that so far. But why were you still beating him after he was handcuffed? The videos, which were released last week, show nothing of the sort. Instead, they captured police officers yanking Tyre Nichols from a car, threatening to hurt him, and then after he ran away, catching up with him and inflicting the deadly beating. Okay. All the while, it appears from the videos, Tyre Nichols never struck back. On Monday, the fallout from Mr. Nichols' death continued. The police department announced that it had suspended 2 more officers, in addition to the 5 who have already been fired and charged with murder in the beating. Meanwhile, the city's fire chief, Gina Sweat, fired 2 emergency medical technicians and a lieutenant who had responded to the scene, saying that they all violated a range of policies. Okay, so check that out as well. And then lastly, this piece right here, this is from thehill.com. See, this is what I've been saying about the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, okay? Because the bill does not defund the police. The bill actually funds the police, all right? Now, if we read this article, I've talked about this before, but it funds it in a good way. Police organizations say failed reform proposal would have strengthened departments, not defunded them. This is from September 28th, 2021. After the talks broke down and Senator Tim Scott went out there and lied, okay, and said it was over defund the police. That's why the talks broke down. 2 police associations released a statement expressing disappointment over police reform negotiations ending on Capitol Hill last week after a bipartisan group of lawmakers said it had reached an impasse. The National Association of Police Chiefs and the Fraternal Order of Police, the FOP, okay, and I'm going to increase the font size of this here. I want everybody to see this, okay, and the FOP are disappointed that Senate negotiators could not reach agreement on police reform legislation. And we thank all of those members of Congress who partnered with us in this effort. The joint statement from the International Association of Police Chiefs and the FOP said, this is what they said. Despite some media reports, at no point did any legislative draft propose defunding the police. It is our joint belief that the provisions under discussion would have strengthened the law enforcement profession, and have helped improve the state of community police engagement without compromising management and officers' rights, authorities, and legal protections. So the Fraternal Order of Police and the International Association of Police Chiefs supported the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, and they were saying it's good for everybody. It's good for police officers. It's good for citizens. Okay, and they say it does not defund the police. Senator Tim Scott lied. He said the sticking point in the negotiations would defund the police. No, it's not. Your ass lied. Now on Sunday, Black Republican Senator Tim Scott, who was negotiating reform efforts with Senator Cory Booker, Democrat of New Jersey, and then Representative Karen Bass, who's now a mayor in California, claimed that the bill advocated for defunding police. Senator Tim Scott claimed the bill advocated for defunding police. These two police unions put out a joint statement basically calling him a lie. Senator Tim Scott on CBS's Face the Nation that Sunday said, we said simply this: I'm not going to participate in reducing funding for the police after we saw major city after major city defund the police. What major city after major city did you see defund the police? How many major cities after major cities did you see defund the police? Meanwhile, Senator Cory Booker, now this is the part that a lot of activists don't understand. Senator Cory Booker, who's one of the sponsors of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, he said the reform would have allocated millions of dollars more to police. Senator Cory Booker said the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act would have allocated millions of dollars more, M-O-R-E, to police. Does that sound like defunding the police? Or does that sound like funding the police? Isn't that what Joe Biden has been saying? That you don't defund the police, you fund the police? And Joe Biden supports the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. He called for the passing of it. Cory Booker is saying the same thing that Biden said. Neither one are talking about defunding the police. They're talking about funding the police. But they're talking about funding the police in a responsible way that gives more protections. Quote, we want to help officers with mental health issues. We want to collect more data. So we should give more resources, Senator Cory Booker said on CNN's State of the Union. This was in September 2021. He's absolutely correct, because all this stuff that people want done costs money. And if you ever been on a city council, if you ever been a mayor, if you ever been on a committee writing an executive order like I have for the city of Detroit, you know all that stuff costs money that people want done. Okay, read this rest of this article here. Police organizations say failed reform proposal would have strengthened departments, not defunded them. September 28th, 2021, thehill.com. They have a link to the letter from the Fraternal Order Police also, from their statement, because I've read the letter. Okay, so check that out. Then also, let me see here. This one, there are other articles dealing with the same thing around the same time, September 28th, 2021. Okay. But what has to happen, what I was explaining on Faraji Muhammad's show today, is that if we look at Fatal Force is probably the most comprehensive database on police killings. Okay. Every year, more white people are shot and killed by police than African Americans. Okay, so let's look at this Washington Post. I've been looking at this since like 2015, since they started keeping track of this. Since this database was created by the Washington Post. Okay, I'm looking at this since 2015. All right, let's see. Where can I find it? Okay. Fatal force 1,110 people have been shot and killed by police in the past 12 months. Okay, that's for 2022. So this was last updated January 25th, 2023. So you go through and look at this here. Black Americans are killed at a much higher rate than white Americans. Oh, so this is a database. You can go in this database. It tells you up to date how many people have been killed each year by police. Okay. See all victims. And they break it down, explore data. They break it down by category and they let you know whether the person was armed, unarmed. You can filter results right here. Filter results. City, state, police department, download data. But you can, they tell you whether the person was armed, unarmed. They tell you whether there was body camera footage, dash cam footage, all of that. Okay. They go through and break this down. It's a comprehensive database of this deals with police killings. Now, Black Americans are killed at a much higher rate than white Americans. So 5.9 African Americans are killed per 1 million people each year. So 1,905 killed in 2022 by police. Let me see. Black people. Let's see. And you're looking at white people shot and killed. Let's see. 3,622. See, Black people much higher rate than white Americans. Although half of the people shot and killed by police are white, Black Americans are shot at a disproportionate rate. They account for roughly 14% of the U.S. population and are killed by police at more than twice the rate of white Americans. Hispanic Americans are also killed by police at a disproportionate rate. This is that's not in the year. That is, what does that represent? I forgot what period of time that is. That's not in the year. I think that's looking at going back to 2015. 5.9 million per year total. Okay, 2.3 per million per year, but that's not, these totals are not for the year. I think that's going back to 2015 when the database started. But we're almost 3 times, we're killed at almost 3 times the rate of white Americans. But when you look at raw numbers, there are more white people shot and killed each year than African Americans. Okay. So the question that we have to ask is, where is the body camera footage of all the white people shot and killed by police? Where is the dash cam footage of all the white people shot and killed by police? Okay. And if that information, if those videos were shown on MSNBC and CNN and Fox News, it would greatly change the narrative. Because as long as this is looked at as a Black issue, as long as this is looked at as a Latino issue, you're not going to get the necessary votes, especially with Republicans controlling the House of Representatives. But even in the Senate, with Democrats controlling the Senate, if all 51 Democrats vote for it, you still need 9 Republicans to vote because you need 60 votes in the Senate. Okay, because of the filibuster, you need 60 votes in the Senate. So what I was saying is that what I said on Faraji's show today is that they need to hold a Senate hearing and also a hearing in the House of Representatives. Bring in the white mothers of white people unjustly shot and killed by police. You got to change the narrative, because there's only 2.5 Black people in the entire U.S. Senate. If you just make this a Black issue, it's going to be easy to dismiss it. But when you start talking about all these white people shot and killed by police, and then you put these white senators at odds with people in their home state that they represent, And now you change the narrative because you start talking about, wait a second, this ain't just a black thing now. Police are killing white people also, and they kill more white people than us. But as long as this remains a black issue, you're not going to get the federal legislation that's really needed. Unless maybe African Americans are 60% of the House of Representatives and 60% of the U.S. Senate, then you'll get it. But the way it is now, no. You have to change. You have to change the narrative. Now, one of the things that needs to happen is that they should take George Floyd's name off the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act. No disrespect to George Floyd or the Floyd family. They should rename it the Law and Order Justice and Policing Act. The Law and Order Justice and Policing Act. Don't center the legislation around a person, because what happened was, first of all, you had some Republicans in the Senate who said that, well, since there was a settlement paid to the Floyd family, $27 million, rightfully so, deservedly so, and because Derek Chauvin was tried and convicted, well, now they got some justice, so maybe you don't have to change the law. See, some of the Republicans' argument was, yes, it was a tragedy he was killed, but the law works because the killer was convicted. Whereas many of us were saying we want to prevent another George Floyd from happening. So you have to change the laws. So when you center that legislation around a person, if that person rightfully so gets some justice, whether you got a whole group of people who have to vote on that bill who say, well, look, it's what else you want? No, that was just a one-off. No, you don't have to change the laws. No, look, they got justice. Look, Derek Chauvin's in prison. Look, they got money. That's the problem with centering the legislation around a person. No, call it the Law and Order Justice and Policing Act. Take the person's name off of it. Bring in all those white mothers into the Senate, into the House of Representatives, showing pictures of their children who were shot and killed unjustly by police, and their loved ones shot and killed unjustly by police, and change the face of the victims of police misconduct. But as long as it just remains a black issue, you ain't gonna be able to get these bills passed, because you have a lot of white people in this country who, even though they say, oh, what happened to George Floyd was terrible and that should not have happened, what happened to Tyre Nichols was terrible, but generally speaking, they say, oh, police have to be hard on those people, have to be hard on African Americans and Latinos, because they're protecting us from them. They're protecting white people from these criminals. So they'll give them a pass. Just keep them out of our neighborhood. Just keep that stuff on the south side of Chicago. Just keep that stuff on the east side. Don't let it come over here. Do what you have to do. Keep those Negroes over there. The same mistake was made with the John Lewis Voting Rights Act. And this is what I was saying on Roland Martin's show, on my show, the African History Network show. The fight for a Voting Rights Act in 2022, 2021 is a different fight than 1965. Stop trying to make this Selma 2.0. Because that fight in 1965 was directly because of what happened in Mississippi in 1890 at the Mississippi State Convention, where they rewrote the Mississippi State Constitution to impose poll taxes and literacy tests, targeting African Americans. After Reconstruction ended in 1877, targeting African Americans, and they were operating based upon so in Alabama, where Selma is in Alabama, the Alabama state constitution of 1901 codified white supremacy, and it imposed poll taxes and literacy tests, things like this. So you're going to see these southern states, these former Confederate states, rewrite their state constitutions to impose poll taxes, literacy tests. In some cases, like in Louisiana, 1898, the grandfather clause. And the grandfather clause basically stated that if your grandfather could not vote prior to 1867, okay, because he was a slave, okay, then that means you can't vote. And that was specifically created. The grandfather clause was specifically created to not disenfranchise poor white men who could not pass the literacy test, because you had a lot of poor white men who were illiterate who couldn't pass the literacy test to vote. So they created a loophole for poor white men who were illiterate called the grandfather clause. Okay, so the reason why you needed the Voting Rights Act in 1965 is to make illegal what happened in Mississippi in 1890 and Oklahoma and South Carolina 1895 when these states rewrote their state constitutions and targeted the African Americans. Now, this article right here from the Washington Post: the Mississippi plan to keep blacks from voting in 1890. We came here to exclude the Negro, because what Mississippi did was called the Mississippi Plan, and this became the model for subjugation of African Americans when it came to voting rights throughout the South. All the other Southern states adopted similar laws. Okay, they talk about Solomon Saladin Calhoun, who was the white county judge who presided over the Mississippi State Convention of 1890. And Solomon Saladin Calhoun said, "Let's tell the truth. If it burst the bottom of the universe," he said, "we came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer. We came here to exclude the Negro. Nothing short of this will answer." So delegates eventually adopted a literacy test and poll tax geared to suppress the black vote in a state that had an African-American majority. African Americans were the majority of the population of the state of Mississippi as a legacy of slavery in 1890. And they changed the state constitution to suppress the African-American vote. And they did this throughout the South. So we get wiped out of the state legislatures. We get wiped out of Congress. So by 1900, the only African-American left in the House of Representatives is George Henry White of North Carolina. And he's going to introduce an anti-lynching bill, the first anti-lynching bill. It took 122 years for us to get a federal anti-lynching bill passed. 122 years. When it passed the House and the Senate in 2022 and signed into law by President Joe Biden, it took 122 years for us to get a federal anti-lynching bill. There was a silent march in 1917 down Fifth Avenue in Manhattan, organized partly by James Weldon Johnson of the NAACP. And James Weldon Johnson was the one who wrote the lyrics to Lift Every Voice and Sing, which became the Black National Anthem. He wrote the lyrics to that. Okay, there was a silent march 1917 demanding a federal anti-lynching law, and that was partly because of the East St. Louis race riot of 1917, but because of the increase in lynchings that were taking place at the beginning of the Great Migration, where you have African Americans moving up north and eventually going to move out west as well. Okay, so all this history is all connected to directly connected to what's taking place today. And these battles we're still fighting today. So the more you understand about history, your understanding of politics, laws, and policies is directly related to your understanding of history. Unfortunately, One, Americans are very ignorant of history. That's how Donald Trump got. They're very ignorant of history and politics. Which is how Donald Trump got like 74 million votes in 2020. But for African Americans, a lot of this stuff we don't understand history or law. So this is why we can't take full advantage when opportunities present themselves. And we don't understand how to turn a moment into a movement and sustain a movement. Understanding that politics is the legal distribution of scarce wealth, power, and resources, and the writing of laws, statutes, ordinances, amendments, and treaties, their adoption, interpretation, and enforcement. And politics impacts every aspect of your life, from the water you drink to the food you eat to the air you breathe to the infrastructure in your city and the road you drive down the street to be able to go to work or to go to your business. So you have a lot of people who talk about economic empowerment, these economic empowerment gurus out here, things like this. I'm all for economic empowerment. My degree's in business administration with a major in marketing from Wayne State University here in Detroit. I taught entrepreneurship for 7 years, did business consulting for 7 years. I'm all for that. But also, I managed African-American-owned companies that had government contracts for the city of Detroit, county of Wayne, and state of Michigan. So I got to see how your economy is shaped by politics and laws, and how your business is dependent upon a healthy economy. All right. Give us a thumbs up. Give us a heart. Give us a like on this broadcast. You can support the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show. So your support helps broadcasts like this happen. Visit our website, TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com, TheAHNHistoryNetwork.com. We have a free we have a free lecture that I'm doing to kick off African American History Month. It is Saturday, February 4th, 2023. Okay, it's going to be 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we're going to deal with the this year's theme for African American History Month is Black Resistance. Black Resistance has been an annual theme going back to 1928. So we're going to deal with this year's theme of Black Resistance. We're going to look at Black Resistance movements throughout history, and we'll deal some with the origins of African American History Month as well. Black History Month, and talk about Dr. Carter G. Woodson and the Association for the Study of Negro Life and History, founded September 1915 in Chicago. So if you go to our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com, scroll down the website, you'll see information for my radio show, The African History Network Show, on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation WFDF. April of 2023, it'll be 7 years doing the African History Network Show on this station. It'll be 13 years, March of 2023, doing a radio show, period, but 7 years on 910 WFDF. Scroll down, we have a Cash App, PayPal information there. A 16-week online class, Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. We have a free class session for that I did January 28th. So you can click right here for the free class session. You can register for the full online course. It's on sale $60, regular $130. We deal with thousands of years of history, what leads up to the transatlantic slave trade taking place. But on Saturday, February 4th, 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I'm doing a free lecture, online lecture at our online school. Click right here, register for right now, and then you'll be able to register for, we'll also do a preview of my new online class that's starting up. It's going to start up Saturday, February 14th. Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade, what they didn't teach you in school. Class number 1 will start up Saturday, February. Hold on. No, I'm sorry. Hold on. Saturday, February 11th. Saturday, February 11th. Class number 1 will start up. Okay. But visit our website, TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. Then the second class that I teach is on Sundays, 2 p.m. to 4 p.m. from the Civil War to the Civil Rights Movement and Black Power, 1865 to 1968. And we had a great class. on Sunday. You can register for that course right here. We do all the sessions live. All the sessions are archived and recorded. You can go back and watch it anytime. So a year from now, 2 years from now, you can go back and watch the entire course. Okay. So we have some free class sessions you can check out. Once you watch those, you'll want to register for the entire course. We have a bundle pack. You can register for both classes for $100. And we had a free class session on Saturday, January 28th of Ancient Kemet, the Moors, and the Ma'afa, Understanding the Transatlantic Slave Trade. Okay, so check that out. All right, look, we have to get out of here. Remember, the African History Network, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right now it's corrects wrong behavior. Also, lastly, you can advertise with the African History Network. You can advertise with the African History Network. Our current promotion, buy 1 month, get 1 month free. African American business owners. Also, post the name of your business here on the thread of the broadcast. We have the information right on the homepage of our website below the classes. Buy 1 month, get 1 month free. We take your 30-second, 60-second commercial, put it into the rebroadcast of our various shows, and into the on our social media platforms, and into the audio podcast of our shows. Also, we're on 9 different audio podcast platforms. If you don't have a commercial, we can create one for you. Email us at AHNshow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AHNshow@TheAfricanHistoryNetwork.com. All right, right now it's corrects wrong behavior. It's not over till we win. Wakanda forever. We'll talk to you next